Onto the offensive line, the final position group previewing training camp for the 49ers in 2025. A lot of returning starters. Which positions are up for grabs? Camp battles on the offensive line on today's Locked On 49ers.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On 49ers. Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker at BD Peacock at Coach Crocky. Thanks everybody for making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Love and appreciate all the everydayers out there that are hanging with us as we get ready for 2025. Rookies hitting the practice field, starting their conditioning, starting their training camp a week early before veterans report next Tuesday. So we are getting close and breaking down the final position group here and some depth. I think more up for grabs than the 5 starting positions on the offensive line, 4 of 5 starters returning. Any opportunity for those starters to change over the course of the next few weeks? We will talk about that on today's show, which is brought to you by FanDuel. And right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Just go to FanDuel.com to get started. So Trent Williams, let's hope he's healthy, right? It's got to start there. And I was looking around at some PFF grades the last few years, and obviously Trent Williams a few years ago broke the grading system for PFF and was still the highest graded blocker for the 49ers last year as a pass blocker and as a run blocker and overall. And actually, I take that back. He was 0.1 actually behind Dominic Pooney in run blocking grade, but overall the highest graded offensive lineman for the San Francisco 49ers and by far the highest graded pass blocker for the 49ers in his 10 games and 649 offensive snaps, and hopefully it's a lot more, and he plays all 17 games and even more in the playoffs. And a healthy Trent Williams goes a long way to making a okay line really good or a good line great, which is what the 49ers hope they have. I'm not exactly sure on that, but Trent Williams obviously a huge part of the line for the 49ers. And at this stage, and we talk about a lot, Croc, right, when it comes to Trent Williams, probably shouldn't expect him to play all the games, but as long as he's healthy enough to play in the important games at the end of the year, I don't know if that means a pitch count for him or just crossing your fingers he's not hurt at the wrong time, because his backup, Jalen Moore, who was another one of the more highly graded 49ers offensive linemen last year and did a pretty darn good job, a respectable job replacing Trent Williams. You're never going to replace Trent Williams, but he got himself a little contract with the Kansas City Chiefs, probably going to be their starting left tackle in week 1, depending on how their rookie recovers from his injury out of Ohio State, Josh Simmons, who was potentially a steal for the Kansas City Chiefs late in round 1. But Trent Williams, what are your expectations for Trent Williams going into his age? I think, what is it, 38 season?
I feel like 37.
I'm going to look that up right now. How old exactly?
Well, as you look that up, just I feel like almost like George Kittle. Right. As these guys age, each year you just think like, oh, okay, they're just going to be themselves because we have a name. But I'm assuming that at some point he's going to slow down. But with the Silverback, I don't know exactly when that's going to be. I feel like he's still playing at a very high level. Is he what he was, I don't know, 3 years ago? I mean, not quite that dominating guy. I don't even think it was 3 years ago. It might have been 2 years ago where he like broke the scale for PFF for like the highest graded offensive lineman ever. So he's capable of playing at a very high level, super athletic, especially for how big he is. It's amazing that he still moves that way. I guess the only thing that can hold him down right now is the injuries. That's the only thing that could potentially slow him down. And those are things that's been happening every single year. And last year we see it kind of stacking up, and you got to hope that he's healthy. That's the biggest thing. We talked about it maybe even shortly after the 49ers traded for him. He's a guy that's going to miss 2 games this season, right? So you have to kind of chalk that up. He's going to be out a couple games. But you just hope that it's not more than that. And you hope that it's not an injury that's going to slow him down in any other way, which more times than not kind of has been. One playoffs, he even admitted that 49ers probably would have been better off with his backup in because he was trying to play on a high ankle sprain. Like the toughness, but you obviously don't want to hurt the 49ers.
Right. And you hope he's in great shape. And, he wasn't around for the early portion of the offseason stuff. He was there for the mandatory mini camp, though. And, last year had the contract dispute with the 49ers. So, hopefully he's in great shape in there early. day one of camp and is healthy and starts the season on the right foot. By the way, happy birthday to Trent Williams, who, young pup, still only 36 years old, turns 37 on the 19th. So in just a few days before training camp starts, Trent Williams would turn 37. So his age 37 season this year. Sorry, Trent, for making you seem a year older than you actually are there. And still playing, obviously, at a high level. And I'll take an old, broken down Trent Williams over, not that he's broken down yet, but an old Trent Williams over a young just about anybody else. So, yeah, hopefully he stays healthy this year for the 49ers, manning that left tackle spot. On the background of this podcast, if you're watching this on YouTube, it says 4 of 5 starters returning, Croc. And those 4 of 5 starters are, which I would be very surprised if there are any different players starting aside from injury for the 49ers on our offensive line. At center with returning Jake Brendel, right guard, who was phenomenal last year as a rookie, Dominic Pooney, and then at right tackle, Colton McKivitz, who, we're kind of worried about going into last year as maybe even a dirty starter for the 49ers, and really was pretty darn good, and is the least of the 49ers worries right now with the way he played last year, and hopefully he continues to play that way. And who knows, maybe he's still kind of getting better, it seems like, even though he's a veteran football player at right tackle. So those are the starters that are returning. Aaron Banks leaving via free agency, and the guy that filled in for Aaron Banks when he was hurt at the end of last year was Ben Barch, and Ben Barch played pretty well. And it seems like Ben Barch is pretty much already locked into that starting spot at left guard. So Trent Williams, Ben Barch, Jake Brendel, Dominic Pooney, Colton McKivitz. Those are the expected starters for the 49ers going into the year. How do you feel about that group of 5? Because an offensive line in a lot of cases, you're only as good as your weakest link. And I always look at an offensive line not as 5 separate players, but as one unit. So when you look at that starting unit, how do you feel about that starting unit? And do you think we'll start naming some other names and some other camp competitions? Do you think any of those spots should be up for grabs potentially for a little more competition in camp?
I think I'm on an island here. Like, I'm not mad at it at all. The 49ers, year in, year out, have shown the ability to put out an offensive line that's competent. Now, are they a dominant offensive line? Are they the Buffalo Bills offensive line? Right? Is it what, when they were all healthy, the Minnesota Vikings offensive line is? Hell no. But I feel like with what Kyle Shanahan wants to do and with the players that he has, being able to contribute, I think the offensive line does a serviceable job. I think the biggest issue that I've seen with them is 49er fans are going to always notice like just the worst plays. But like Ben Barch is someone that they've kind of really gotten on his case a lot. Social media, we're reading it, we're seeing it. But Kyle Shanahan is a guy that kind of believes in him, and they believe in all these other guys on the. Did I say Ben? Yeah, Ben Barch. Jake Brendel. Brendel, my bad. Yeah. I said Ben Barch. Ben Barch doesn't sound bad. He's a guard.
Brendel is the fan base's favorite whipping boy right now on the offensive line.
Yeah. Jake Brendel. Fan base does not care for Jake Brendel. But when you kind of just watch a game, if you just don't think about the biggest moments that you remember him flopping or whatever, just watch an entire game and you'll say, not bad. And I think that's how Kyle Shanahan looks at it. Could be worse. Would like to be better. How do we improve on it? I don't think they take enough big swings to improve over guys like Jake Brendel, but he probably likes just that veteran aspect to his game. And overall, I think one of the bigger things about offensive line is building continuity between 5 guys. So you got 4 out of 5 guys returning. I think that's a win for the 49ers. Will it be a top 5 unit? I'm not foreseeing that. But if you told me they were 13th, like they were last year, 14th in that range, top half of the league as far as offensive line goes, I think that's something that the 49ers can win with. Again, is it ideal? I would love to have first-round guys across the board and guys that just maul the opposing teams. But the 49ers, they just don't have that. But I do think they have more than a serviceable unit.
Yeah, and they've decided to put more money and resources elsewhere. And really, you could look at it and say 5 of 5 starters returning because Ben Barch worked with that unit last year and did start some games. And so he'll be back there, most likely starting at left guard. What competitions are there on the offensive line? And I want to talk a little bit more about some of those PFF grades and what Kyle Shanahan looks for and something that is consistently something that you see among strengths and weaknesses for San Francisco 49ers offensive linemen. Next. This episode of Locked On 49ers brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Summer sports, they're in full swing, whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, high-stakes soccer action. Crocker, if I'm not mistaken, was golfing maybe competitively in a tournament this last weekend, by the way. FanDuel is the place to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action, so why not make it a little more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned on the beach. In fact, you can get in on the game while you are also getting sunburned on the beach. And of course, baseball, soccer, golf, all the summer sports. But I mean, there's tons of ways to already get in on the action for the NFL season as well. You can bet on the 49ers to win the Super Bowl. You can bet on all of the weekly lines for the San Francisco 49ers. Tons of prop bets for the season for NFL and college football. And if you're new to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. All you got to do is open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. Do you want to tell listeners how your golf outing went this weekend? I also golfed this weekend. Walked a lot of holes. Walked 27 holes. Got my steps in. I'm getting close, Croc. I really feel like I'm getting close. My game is right there. You haven't been playing a lot of golf. You've been busy with this coaching thing, and that makes.
We won an award. So we did the whole, what is it called? Scramble?
Scramble, yeah. 4-man scramble?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, man. We have 4 guys, and we were so good that we earned a plaque. I should have, is it in here? It's probably in my car still, right? But we earned a plaque for the worst golfers, and the plaque says, "You suck at golf." So we were bad. We were the worst team out there. When I was warming up on the range, I was, connecting, hit some good balls, was feeling good. The moment we got out there, I mean, it just the worst. You would assume I never picked up a golf club in my life. So it just encouraged me. The competitor that I am, Croc, you got to get it back out there. I live 1 minute from a golf course, and I can go up there and hit balls all the time. I got to get back out there at least twice a week.
Yeah, you got to hone those skills. It's a tough sport. It's a challenging sport. That's what's so fun about it. And if it was a scramble, the other thing you probably was too honest about your scores, because
yes,
I've done some scrambles, and one thing that does tend to happen, suspicious scores from the teams that end up winning those scramble tournaments. I'll just say that. Talked about the 49ers. Not much of a scramble at the top of the depth chart for the offensive line. I think those top 5 starters are probably pretty well locked in, aside from injury. But some potential battles for the depth on this roster. And the 49ers didn't bring in a lot of guys. 1 draft pick, some undrafted guys, some late season additions that are interesting, that could potentially push or are fighting for their own roster spots here in 2025. But really quick, I'm looking at the PFF grades, and this is a very common thing that I'm noticing a trend for years and years with Kyle Shanahan and 49ers offensive lines, is that they're just better run blockers than pass blockers, almost to the point where I don't think Kyle Shanahan and Chris Foerster, the offensive line coach, really care about pass blocking all that much. I think they would like to have good pass blockers, Croc, but I think that the idea is, to simplify it, the idea is they want to be able to run the ball. Obviously, Kyle Shanahan always wants to run the ball, and they want to get the ball out so quickly that they can kind of scheme up the pass blocking enough to where, just give me a couple seconds. Give Brock 2.5, 3 seconds. You should be all right. And you look at the grades, they're consistently better run blocking grades than pass blocking grades for the offensive linemen. And you see that over and over again. Jake Brendel, perfect example of that. You look at the PFF grades for him, 71.6, which is, solid for a run blocker, not amazing, but solid as a run blocker. 55.1, which is the worst of the offensive linemen that played, more than a game for the 49ers last year as a pass blocker. And that's something you consistently see, and you see it a lot with a lot of their offensive linemen throughout the years. So Pooney, better run blocker than a pass blocker, even though he's fine as a pass blocker. Colton McKivitz actually was one of the few guys at better pass block grade, even though it was very similar to his run block grade. But it's just something that, to remember when you're thinking about 49ers offensive line, we're thinking about who they're going to draft. If they're not a good run blocker, they're not going to draft them.
Man, I think you are spot on with the pass protection part of it. I think with the 49ers, just the way they're built, it really is on Kyle Shanahan and Brock Purdy to be good offensive linemen in a sense, or assist the offensive lineman.
Yeah.
The offense is predicated on timing and rhythm, and it's not just starting with Brock Purdy. This has been going back to Jimmy Garoppolo when he was having, gosh, what was the guy's name that he had to play right tackle? Not Trent Brown. Trent Brown was down. There was another guy who was like an interior guard, but then had to move outside. He was like a free agent signing, I want to say from Jacksonville. So this is like,
gosh, I know who you're talking about, and that's going to drive me crazy, man, because I'm not going to come up with the name right now. It was a similar name.
Zane Beatles. Is that it?
Zane Beatles.
No.
Zane Beatles was one of them. I think Zane Beatles might be the guy. He played interior, was pushed out, and played a little. Zane Beatles, is that the name? Oh, gosh, that's going to drive me crazy.
Okay, well, why you look that up?
So
Either way, right?
No, 2007, 18?
That was 17.
Okay.
17. So if you guys would go back, right, take a trip down memory lane, 2017, Jimmy Garoppolo's out there, and it's like, all right, why were the 49ers able to be successful during Jimmy Garoppolo's tenure during 2017 over the stretch of his last 5 games, right? And he was number 1 in the NFL in a lot of statistical categories, a lot of them. And the reason why was the ball was just getting out of his hands. He didn't have to be Houdini and make a lot of magic. Like, that was not a good offensive line. They were completely rehauling and rebuilding the entire O-line, but he was getting the ball out of his hands. And I think that's what you want from Brock Purdy. That's what you need for Kyle Shanahan, to make sure that he is designing the plays and drawing things up in a way to where the ball can get out of his hands. One thing that can really help Brock Purdy, and I'm sure it does, is him, pre-snap, understanding what he's seeing from the defense, the 2 high, the single high, what coverage is okay. If they roll down late, what am I expecting? As I drop back, I'm reading, boom, post-snap, I'm getting the ball out of my hands. I make my offensive line look good. And he's going to have to do that a lot. But that's the case around the NFL. Was I right on the name?
No. Well, yes. Yeah. Zane Beatles was around in 2017 for sure. So I think that's the player you're thinking of for 2017. I feel like there was a very similar situation that happened a year or 2 later. But Zane Beatles, yeah, former Jaguar, came over to the 49ers and played some offensive tackle there. But I mean, I'm just looking at these names and guys I just completely forgot about. Do you remember Brandon Fusco? And Kilgore was still around in the early Shanahan era at center.
Wow.
Joe Staley obviously was the left tackle at that point. So you had the bookends of Trent Brown and Staley. And then remember, they drafted, shockingly, an offensive tackle at the top of the 2018 draft in Mike McGlinchey, and then traded Trent Brown that night after the first round and swapped out the right tackle position. Michael Person is another one. That was the 2018 season. I think he was more of the kind of combo guard tackle. I don't know if I was thinking of him or not. I'm looking at the 2018 team now, but I mean, it's amazing how much changeover there's been on the offensive line throughout the years for the 49ers.
They worked on getting something that is much more serviceable. And again, Jimmy Garoppolo figured out a way to make that work and be very efficient during that time. So with the offensive line that they're putting out there right now, which I think is better than those years, albeit how much better, right? Like, conversation you have with some of the players, like, yeah, it's better. How much better is it? Well, it's a top half of the league offensive line, which if you ask the kid Stroud, CJ Stroud, ask him if he would like a top half of the league offensive line. He'd be like, yes, please. I'm tired of having the worst offensive line in the NFL.
Yeah.
I just watched quarterbacks and I'm watching Joe Burrow out there. And Burrow is, I mean, he was really good, but he's getting hammered all season long. And his linemen were the first ones to, I mean, they celebrated him. They bigged him up. They pick him up. They were his biggest hype man. And it's like, well, I get it, because you guys suck. Like, you guys are getting him killed every single play. And they're throwing the ball. Their defense isn't getting any stops. They lost 2 games scoring 38 points, another 2 games scoring 34 points, and another game scoring 33 points. The defense was atrocious. He's having to throw the ball. He's getting hit left and right. Like, he would love to have the 49ers offensive line that they had last year.
And you think back about some of those offensive lines, some of the journeyman guys that filtered through. And, if you're upset about Jake Brendel or Colton Kukevitz or, Ben Barch, whatever it is, just remember how bad some of those lines were. And the 49ers have a lot of continuity right now with their current line. And I think a big part of it with Jake Brendel, too, is the center makes the calls in Kyle Shanahan's offense. So you got to be able to trust the center. You're not just going to willy-nilly throw a center in there. And you're probably not going to throw a rookie center in there probably ever. It probably shouldn't be something that you should expect to see with the 49ers. If they draft the center of the future, he's probably going to have to play guard first or be forced into action at center or just be really amazing right away. Camp competitions on the offensive line for the 49ers in 2025. Next. All right, taking a look at the San Francisco 49ers. We've talked about the starters. What about the backups? Who are the players even going to be at camp this year? And some guys are new. Some guys just kind of joined the scene late in the season last year. They did a couple of those where Austin Pleasance has been around, but you don't really remember much about him. They signed Matt Hennessy from the Atlanta Falcons in like December, like after Christmas, just late in the season. He was around for a game essentially, but it was a 2-year deal to get him for essentially this season more so than have him play any sort of a role last year. And Matt Hennessy was a guy that I thought was a perfect fit for a Shanahan style offense. He was in all my mock drafts the year he came out, which was, 5 years ago in the draft, started and then got his job taken at center from Drew Dahlman, who was another guy I thought was a perfect fit for the 49ers offense and in Atlanta. And so now Matt Hennessy, I think, is a key backup for the 49ers at center and at guard. Spencer Burford, where's he going to be lining up? He's been playing some left tackle while Trent Williams was out in OTAs. The 49ers also brought in, I mentioned Austin Pleasance, who a lot of people in the spring said he looked really good and big and athletic out there. But again, I mean, there's no pads on. It's just that it's one of those positions that you just cannot scout without the pads on, without hitting. So we're probably going to have to wait for some preseason games to really start evaluating some of these guys. Andre Dillard, former first-round pick, athletic player, has not had the kind of career you would expect from a first-rounder with the Philadelphia Eagles or elsewhere. He is in the mix as a potential backup to Trent Williams as well, battling with Spencer Burford, battling with Austin Pleasance, and battling with Sebastian Gutierrez as offensive tackles on the roster. Another interesting name on the interior, Croc, is Drake Nugent, who's an undrafted center last year. And so I think depth is actually solid at center. And if you don't think Jake Brendel's any good, you probably wouldn't be super worried if he got hurt, and you might think that Matt Hennessy or Drake Nugent could come in and play pretty well also. So I do at least like the depth that the 49ers have at center, potentially some decent players there backing up Jake Brendel. Spencer Burford probably will mix in at guard. Maybe is he a sixth man? Is he a super sub? Is he only playing tackle? Does he have an opportunity to compete? Does Matt Hennessy have an opportunity to compete? Does Nick Zakelj have an opportunity to compete for the left guard spot with Ben Barch? Nick Zakelj is a guy that just, I haven't seen it from him, but the team seems to like him quite a bit, and he's been able to hang around, and he was Brock Purdy's roommate at first, so maybe that's helped him stick on the roster. So we'll see if he can do that once again. And then the 49ers 7th-round pick in Connor Colby will be in the mix at guard. And another couple of guys I don't know a lot about, which is Zach Johnson, and then undrafted rookie free agent Drew Moss. So those are and then the international player, which is Isaac Alarcon, who's, I believe, suspended right now. But those are the names. Those are the players that the 49ers will break camp with this year, unless there's any late additions. And DJ Humphries was the rumored signing, and then it turned out he didn't actually sign with the 49ers, and they signed Andre Dillard instead. So that was a weird thing, but he's not on the list. So he's not on the roster for the 49ers. But those are the names, Croc. What do you think about those names and the depth competitions on this 49ers roster on the offensive line?
I just talked about winning first-round picks all across the offensive line, and then you look and you see a guy like Andre Dillard, who is a former first-round pick, of course, but he's been on a few teams since then. Do we have any expectations on a guy like, remember when the 49ers got Laken Tomlinson and you were able to get him from the Detroit Lions? And there's always a first-round pick, but man, he's just not good. 49ers were able to trade a late draft pick to be able to get him over. And next thing you know, the 49ers are re-signing him. And when he was gone, it was like, we were sad to see him go. Like, oh, man, taking our best guard from us. So do you think that this 49ers could be somewhat of a rehab for a guy like Andre Dillard, who people thought was going to be really good?
I don't know. It was tough because the scouting report on him was that, not that he was soft, but that it was just like he was in that air raid system. And I know, Croc, you run some form of the air raid, right, in your offense. So I'm not going to say anything negative about the air raid offense, but it was just like there was not a lot of physicality at all to his game, and I think that really, when he got to the NFL, it was kind of a no-go in that regard. So I'm not going to blame the scheme on it. It was just the way he played, on top of how the scheme asked him to play in college. But he was a really good athlete and probably doesn't really fit the bill of, good pass blocker or good run blocker, bad pass blocker kind of thing. It was kind of a little bit more of the opposite in a nice, that's great feet, but not physical. So I don't know if that's even a great fit. I might think that Spencer Burford's the guy as a maybe the best backup at 4 spots, both tackle and guard spots potentially. So I'm interested to see what Spencer Burford looks like going back to his natural tackle position that he played in college.
I think a lot of people have been screaming for that. He's a guy that showed tremendous athleticism, but the 49ers just said, no, you're going to play guard for us, and never had a shot out the bat to play anything other than guard. And he got a lot of experience, got a lot of playing time, but you're hoping that he can be something in the mode of McKivitz, a guy who was playing guard, and they said you're a guard. You're not a tackle, even though you played that in college. And he comes to the 49ers, plays guard, doesn't work out, goes out, plays tackle, and all of a sudden he's been a starter. So could you get something out of him like that? I think that would be a dream come true.
And I'm intrigued by Matt Hennessy too, because I liked him so much in college, and he started early for the Atlanta Falcons and had some nice, I'm looking at his classic Shanahan offensive lineman here too, looking at the PFF grades here, because he graded out pretty well in 20. So he was drafted in 2020 as a 3rd round pick. Didn't play in 2023, but his first 3 years, a little rough as a rookie. Then in 2021, he was a starter, had really solid grades, 88.1 run block grade, 50 pass block grade. So, the same sort of thing, but a little bit better as a pass blocker. His 3rd year, 2022, but that was kind of when he got his job taken from him. And he was okay there. And then, the grades weren't good at all and just didn't really have an opportunity to play the last couple of years. So he kind of fits the mold that we're talking about with Brendel, where better run blocker than a pass blocker. And is that what did him in? He might be just what the 49ers are looking for, if that's the case. If he is still a really good run blocking interior offensive lineman, has that athleticism to get out and run the outside zone stuff. So he's still intriguing to me, but he hasn't been on the field much the last couple of years. So I don't know really what happened with him. Is there an injury that's held him back and hampered him? Is he not quite the same player that he used to be physically on his Temple tape coming out of college? So, but a name that intrigues me just because I liked him a lot pre-draft, but just haven't seen much of him for since 2022, basically.
I think the biggest thing with this offensive line, and is going to kind of end this conversation with where we started, and that's with Trent Williams and the health of him. I think Trent Williams being good is going to help the left guard, which is going to in turn help the center. Dominique Puni's done a terrific job, and now Colt McKivitz, I think we are more comfortable with him playing at the tackle spot. So if there's any thoughts of this offensive line being good or serviceable, right? Like, I don't want people to take this conversation as me saying that I'm so content with the offensive line and they've done an amazing job. I just know it is what it is. And there are a lot of bad offensive lines around the league. Everybody's trying to get better. Could the 49ers have done more to get better? Probably, but bringing back 4 out of your 5 starters, and like you said with Ben Bartch, a guy who got starting reps a lot last season, there's 5 guys that you're hoping continue to build a certain continuity to where you're not having missed assignments or blown assignments or missed blocks. Everybody understands exactly what they're doing. You can continue to work together. So I'm excited to see that. Can they take a step up? Can you go from being 14, 15 in the NFL to 9, 10, 8, 9, 10, like just because of another year together and understanding exactly what you're supposed to be doing?
Right. And could Dominic Puni transition into like a superstar guard, right? Because he was already so good right away. Are we talking about a perennial Pro Bowl type of guy the 49ers are going to have over there? And they start to feel really good about the right side with the way Colton McKivitz was solid last year. And then, you just need a little development. Can Spencer Burford hold down a swing tackle job? Has Andre Dillard figured something out? Do you get one of these undrafted rookies the last couple of years, all of a sudden looks like a player for the 49ers, and then it really starts to fill out the depth of the unit, and you start to feel a lot better about it, because there's going to be some injuries. And, if the 49ers don't have an answer behind Trent Williams, and then that makes everybody else worse on the offensive line, that's where things could start to go south. And then you're in the 20s as far as how good of an offensive line you are, ranked through the league instead of 14. So give me 14. I'll take it. Solid. Get through the season and worry about the rest of it. What do you guys think about the 49ers offensive line? Let us know at BD Peacock, at Coach Crocky, in the comments on YouTube. Thanks for stopping in. Make sure you are subscribed on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And a very special event this week is happening. Locked On NFL Top 100 is here, as voted on by the NFL hosts of the Locked On Podcast Network. Our Top 100 was formed by experts that cover these teams and players every day. Find the full list on Locked On Sports Today on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. It will be unveiled on Wednesday, and then Croc and I will talk about the 49ers on the list and critique the list as voted on by our fellow colleagues here at the Locked On Podcast Network. So don't miss our reaction to it on the next episode, where those San Francisco 49ers players landed and how many of them got into the NFL Top 100, according to the Locked On Podcast Network. So tune in there, and we'll be back tomorrow, breaking it all down right here, Locked On 49ers.